There was a little bit of a step up thing because I had a huge disappointment. My first movie didn't come out at all.
Right.
Then my second movie, I was a star of, but it tanked.
Right.
I remember going to some of the theaters the night that it came out just to see if people were showing up. And, there was, there were some. I remember there was one scene where I'm shirtless, where I take off my shirt, and somebody in the back yelled, "Where's the beef?" Which is a reference that a lot of people don't get anymore. But it was a very famous commercial at the time.
Where's the beef? It was implying that you were a little too thin. Greetings, my friends. I'm in Croatia, and I'm on a little week-long vacation in this beautiful part of the world. If you can see, the guys who do this podcast with me, who do Stories to Tell with me, are constantly getting angry with me when I post these intros from exotic locations, especially if I'm outdoors, because the sound is terrible. But look at this. So they're gonna have to get over it on this one. And I had to get this into you guys before this week's episode airs. My guest on this week's episode of Stories to Tell is none other than the great Jon Cryer. Jon Cryer and I only became acquainted in the last few years through social media, actually. One of the only benefits of social media is running into people you admire and end up getting along with. Jon's a great guy, very funny, really bright guy. We talked about his career, we talked about all kinds of stuff. We talked about he wrote a great memoir a few years ago. If you haven't checked it out, you should. He also has a new podcast that he's produced, a true crime podcast called The Man Who Calculated Death. We talked about that. We talked about a lot of stuff. We just hung out and had a drink and told some funny stories. I think you'll love this episode. I'll be filming a bunch more when we get back stateside. I'm headed from here to New York this week to perform with Hugh Jackman at Radio City Music Hall. Hugh and I are old friends, and he's been doing a series of shows at Radio City, and he asked me to come and sit in with him and do a couple of songs with him as a surprise guest. Well, not really a surprise guest, because I think it has been announced. But I'm really looking forward to that and seeing Hugh and seeing his show. And then back at it. Some tour dates coming up soon. It's a lot going on. But for now, it's just Croatia and this beautiful day. I hope you guys are good where you are. Subscribe to Stories to Tell. I hope you like this week's interview with Jon Cryer. Check it out now. See ya. We start with a toast, Jon Cryer.
Okay. Yes,
I'm so
Richard
happy
Marx.
to see you.
So great to see you as well.
And I'm so honored that you chose to be a guest here.
My pleasure. Welcome back to the United States. I know you've been abroad.
Thank you.
Teaching youngsters to sing and bring out their
Not just
wonderfulness.
youngsters.
Oh, good.
The thing
Some
about the
elderly
voice
people?
is, I actually had a woman on my team who was in her 50s, a great rock singer. She kicked around all the clubs in Australia, never really made it. And you know how the show works. You don't see anybody, right? The four chairs are turned away, opposite direction. All four chairs turned for her. She's, and she was like this older woman with this Ann Wilson kind of
Barracuda.
Amazing rock voice. And so she was on my team. I didn't think that she was going to be able to go all the way, which she didn't, but she's, but it's like, it was so fun to just sit and, especially in Australia where they have this depth of vocal ability. There's something going on in the water or something. Because literally, your f***ing barista can sing better than anybody here.
Let's loose with something.
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder if it's a cultural. Is it like maybe they go to church on Sunday? Who knows? I mean, obviously a lot of amazing voices came out of gospel choirs and stuff like that. But yeah, I wonder.
I mean, there's a lot of great artists and great singers. from Michael Hutchence to
Sure.
this guy John Farnham. I don't know about him, but
I don't know
the legend in Australia. And anyway, I don't know. But yes, it was great, and I'm happy to be back.
That seems tinged with regret. No, it is. I'm sure it's not that you don't devoutly love your motherland.
100%.
But that Australia in and of itself is fantastic.
Australia in and of itself is fantastic.
Yeah.
This was my 18th visit, I think, or something like that in my life. So I've toured there many, many times, but this was a prolonged period, 2 months living there. And I guess we can have this conversation now.
Sure. Might as well. Why not?
What we found was one of the things that really made us fall in love with it is Daisy, and Daisy pointed it out. She said, this reminds me of America before, not even just before Trump, but before the political climate changed so dramatically around his election.
Yeah.
It was kind of heading in the direction, but then this was like the nail on the head, right? And Australia, which certainly they have their share of political bullshit, as does
every country does, yes.
Democracy. But we noticed that you don't ever overhear people talking about politics in a restaurant. You don't hear anybody arguing about it. You don't hear from people. I have friends there. It's just not a topic. It's the occasional, well, the government needs to do something about that, or that's just ridiculous, or that's f***ed up. But that's it. And people are just going about their days,
their lives,
living their lives, and seemingly like everybody's got their shit, everybody's got hardships, everybody's got challenges, but it's not this incessant, divisive energy. And it was so nice to be around.
That's lovely. Yeah. That's lovely.
And then we had to come back here.
And then, but everything's great here.
Yeah, of course.
Everything's great. So,
so that leads me to a question for you, because I know how in it you are. I want to talk not so much about your positions necessarily, although you're certainly welcome, and it'll come up, but I want to talk about what the political climate has done to your joy. How much real estate does it take up in your daily mind?
Well, I've actually, nobody asked me to get involved politically. The United States was not clamoring. It's like, what does that guy who played Ducky think? They do not, the vast majority of Americans do not care, and that's as it should be. But no, for me, when the first Trump term happened, I was very concerned because I'm in the entertainment industry. You're in the entertainment industry. We understood that Trump was this creation of the entertainment industry. He was not this brilliant billionaire businessman. He's a blowhard, ridiculous guy. He's a character. And I have talked to NBC executives who, were the architects of The Apprentice saying, yeah, we thought he was harmless. They have said that to me, and so for me, that first administration was scary, but I still felt like a happy warrior. I felt like, you know what, folks, we got to learn this, and this is how we're going to learn this. Unfortunately, it's this guy's going to hurt a lot of people, and that's what happened eventually. Unfortunately, this second time is a completely different animal, and I would say it has slid into and I don't want to hijack this whole thing because we always have fun when we talk, and I want to have fun, and we will, I swear. Yeah. But the stuff that is happening now on a constitutional level is so reminiscent of deeply scary things that have happened in the past to other countries that.
The worst of history repeating itself.
The worst of history is repeating itself here. And, we as Americans, we want to live our lives and enjoy our lives and be with our families and have fun and go to movies and,
like Australians do.
Australians do, exactly. And so I hate being the guy saying, guys, we're becoming an authoritarian kleptocracy. I don't like saying that. I don't like that the United States, that's happening to the United States. But sadly, that is what's happening to the United States right
agree.
now. And it's very scary. I understand a lot of people had a lot of hope for Donald Trump, and I'm so sorry that he completely was not deserving of it. He's not. He's screwing over the people that voted for him, as well as the people that voted for him wanted to screw over. He wanted, he's screwing over everybody. I'm sad about that. I'm sad that this will happen. But, other countries have come through these things. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
The United States is an ocean liner. Turning us around is just on a dime. This is not going to happen. This is going to take a lot of work and a lot of people putting a lot of resources into it. I'm mostly really up for that. Some days I get tired, and sometimes I get scared for people close to me. But I'm hopeful. I love America, and I want it to get through this. And there are days that I get really hopeful.
Yeah, me too.
Other days I get very disappointed, but that's how struggles happen. Great struggles are that. They are struggles.
What you just said, though, one of the things you said right there, your love for this country, our love for this country, has gotten, I don't think that people who are polar opposite of our views, I don't think that people who even might be watching or listening to this, who are already like rolling their eyes because they feel diametrically opposed to what the way we feel, for whatever reasons. One of the things that I think is unfair is that those of us who really are against this and the tide that has been building for years and years is they don't view us as the patriots that we are. I mean, it's real for us, for the way we feel and the things that we're afraid of and the things that we're seeing to happen in real time. Our, whether it's silent or vocal outrage, is based in our patriotism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, certainly is for me.
Like I feel protective of our Constitution.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it before because I never felt it was this much at risk.
Yeah.
It was never this threatened.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like, how can everybody just be like letting this happen?
That has been the most terrifying part, is that a lot of, because of the way our government works, the opposing party is very limited in power right now because they don't have control of any of the levers of federal power. So we want them to lead, and they're like, we don't have the power right now.
Well, you and I might disagree on this, but part of that for me is that I don't feel that the opposing party has a real message.
Not yet.
And they certainly don't have a messenger.
Not yet.
So
I agree.
That's a problem.
Yes, and again, that will emerge organically. The messages that stick will pick the messenger.
Yeah, right. Well said.
So again, we're still in very early days. This is 3 months in.
Yeah.
So again, this is an ocean liner, and it's going to take a while to turn it. We're Americans. We want to fix it right away. We're like, well, impeach him.
Right?
Because He's been in office for 3 months. He has already committed several impeachable offenses.
And defied Supreme Courts and all the things that anybody else on the other side would have already been impeached and hung for.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of crazy, the double standard.
Yeah.
I do feel that Donald Trump being the kingpin, if you will, or the face, is only part of the problem. I mean, I don't think it's just him. I mean, I think that who he has surrounded himself with and the stars, if you will, who have emerged from that whole thing that is MAGA.
No, it's a whole ecosystem.
Yes, it's a whole ecosystem. That is just as, in some ways, more terrifying to me.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it started in the mid-'90s with Fox News, the founding of Fox News, which was founded by Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes to be specifically a right-wing propaganda outlet. That's what happened.
Yep.
They have been wildly successful. Rupert Murdoch has been successful. It started obviously in Australia.
Yep.
And yet somehow has managed to, like in England and Australia, where the press that is very Rupert Murdoch influenced is very combative. And, there's still this sort of baseline, I don't know if I wouldn't call it civility or something, but
Apathy?
But maybe it's apathy. I don't know. Or maybe they sort of write off a certain amount of that and they just don't let it come into their lives. I don't know. But it has managed to be so that particular ecosystem that has arisen now has all these other engines, not just Fox News. There's all these other areas that and the influencers and the podcasters and all that side. It's all self. It keeps building itself.
When you say influencers, unlike some other people who call themselves influencers, these are people who really do have influence.
Oh my gosh,
massive
yes.
influence.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And there was the talk radio years with Rush Limbaugh and, all of it is now coming to a head. We've had 40 years of
an echo chamber.
And that has created and a lot of this is there's the American right that deserted the Democrats in the 60s because of the Civil Rights Act are still mad about that.
Yes.
They're still mad about that. And they've been trying to dismantle the federal government ever since. And that's why they're angry at the DEI stuff. That's why they're hitting the Civil Rights Act. Just yesterday, he wrote an executive order basically saying the Civil Rights Act doesn't count anymore. That's been the project, the right-wing project for 40 years. And it is finally coming to a head.
So do you think that the millions upon millions of people who had to just swallow that, they're racist, they're bigoted, they're still angry, but they're dying off because we're talking about people who were of an age even when that was all going down. So some of them have already died off. Do you think that the not the stranglehold really, but in a way it could be, is being fueled by the offspring of those people who were taught those same racist and bigoted views?
I don't. It's a different thing. It has merged with Christian nationalism. Like I remember, like Ronald Reagan, not my favorite president at all. When he first arose, he couched all of the dismantling of the federal government in anti-communism. They've done an amazing job of turning things that are at the core. In the back of their mind, racist, like this hatred of immigrants, into meat and potatoes.
Just like Jesus would have said.
Exactly. We're just worried about women being brutalized by these undocumented people. That's it. It's about women. It's about women's rights. It's about women's freedom. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
They've managed to turn these little things.
Yeah.
The Trump administration is throwing out legal immigrants, people who've had temporary protected status, for many, many years here in the United States that have made careers and lives and enriched the communities that they're in and not committed crimes, who are here legally. He's revoking their status and sending them home while inviting white South Africans, white South African refugees. If that doesn't say it all.
Well, you're stacking your team.
Yeah.
You're putting your team together.
Yeah. So at any rate.
Yes.
I'm worried about all this stuff.
Before we leave this topic, what is interesting to me, and I alluded to it and started to ask about it. So I'll ask the question by saying this. When you and I actually became acquainted, as a handful of my acquaintances and friends now, it was through Twitter. When Twitter was fun.
Yes.
When Twitter was awesome.
Twitter was fun.
I haven't been over in that cesspool in a long time, but I loved it. And I don't remember exactly how I think it had to have been, we got part of a same thread or people in common. And then you and I were communicating, and then we were like-minded. I loved that you got your points across, but in a funny way. And then we ended up going to lunch and kind of like going, hey, we should know each other. Mm-hmm. And I'm really grateful to Twitter for that. I'm grateful to Twitter for
me too.
Daisy's being my wife.
Yes.
I met Daisy on Twitter. So I have, these people in my life who I am very grateful to have, you among them. It was at a time when I was not consumed by the political landscape, but certainly much more mentally focused on it. I was touring, I was having fun, I was having a good life, but I was spending a lot of my brain power on outrage and seeing every day, like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And talking to people, and this dominated my conversations. And about, I guess it was really in the last 2 years or 2.5 years, something clicked over for me, and I realized that it was robbing me of joy. Mm-hmm. And I, much like if this becomes a problem for me, I will take the steps to make sure it's not a problem for me. And I realized that the anger that I was feeling about something that I really do not, we might disagree about this, I don't believe that I can control.
No, we're leaves in a pile of a huge pile of leaves.
Yeah, raindrops in the ocean.
Yeah, we have illusions of control.
And we're about the same age.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah, we're about the same age, which is it was astonishing to me that we had not met back in the 80s.
I know.
When we were first starting.
I know, because we were running
and we both had hair.
But we were running in similar circles.
Yes,
and we didn't.
Exactly. It was crazy.
But I mentioned our age because that was another factor for me. I thought, if I'm lucky, and I try to be healthy, but if I'm lucky, I might have 20 more years on this planet. How do I want to spend them?
Yeah.
It ain't bitching about Trump.
Yeah, that's fair.
It ain't bitching about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I can have my every so often what the but beyond that, it's like should we have another martini? Or should we go to Cabo this weekend? That's how I want to spend my time. I don't want to spend it with that. I will not let this show rob me of one more second of joy.
That's fair. I think that's fair. And I think joy is a liberating act in the midst of all this.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And it's easy. Here's the thing. Let me point this out, not to interrupt you, but I don't want it to come off so callously cavalier. I'm lucky that I can do that because the worst of the worst, at least on paper, doesn't particularly affect me. So it's a very easy thing for me to go, I'm tuning that shit out. I'm just going to live my amazing life, my blessed life. There's a part of me that feels like all the more reason that if I don't, then I'm an asshole because I am not really showing the gratitude for my circumstances. But it doesn't make me go, yeah, but I don't care about black people, or I don't care about women's rights, or I don't care about
people
or trans people or immigrants, or it's not that.
Yeah.
It's that I don't feel that that if I were to make the choice to be completely focused on that and outraged and angry about it, it wouldn't help them.
It's an outrage. It's like 14 outrages per day.
Per hour.
Per hour.
Yeah.
It's astonishing. But that is partially because the left-wing outrage engine has finally sort of spun into existence kind of much, as perhaps more organically than the right-wing outrage engine. And that's part of what you observe that's different in Australia. But at any rate, what I have done that has helped me a great deal is to try to think really long term, which is find organizations that are like right wing has had incredible success with the Federalist Society. Are there organizations on the other side that you can fund that are doing the long-term work of setting a legal agenda? What are the steps that need to be taken? We've got to get rid of Citizens United. We've got to get rid of Buckley versus Vallejo. We've got to get rid of there are a lot of legal steps that have to happen in order to return this to a democracy.
Right.
And so we have to think of the people who are the people that are taking the long term. There's an organization called the First 50 that's getting young. That's advocating for young politicians to give them the infrastructure that Turning Point USA gives to right-wing people. We're trying to create a real infrastructure to fix this. And so I feel like that helps because the outrage of the day is frustrating, and I'll log in and try to make some funny comments. Occasionally I get really mad. Yeah. But I try to think long term, and that does help. I try to find organizations that are long term going to be doing things. I was talking with some people at GLAAD about the hatred that's directed at the trans community right now, and I feel like, and they've had enormous success with narratives, with stories, with the day-to-day stories of humans who are living their lives like this.
That's what needs to happen.
That's what it's
you
like.
have to humanize every situation
so that you understand things, and make it one person. Pick one person. Pick one story. I mean, part of the reason we have gay marriage is because of Will and Grace. Because Will and Grace changed the narrative and the perception of. Actually, Will and Grace is pretty amazing in many respects because it reveled in gay culture in a way that was incredibly specific to gay culture, and made incredibly specific references to gay culture that people outside of it were like, I have no idea what they're talking about. Still managed to be wildly funny and wildly popular. That's like the bullseye. Is finding those things that.
Well, it was brilliant writing and brilliant, funny writing housed in that concept.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So at any rate,
I saw a funny meme today, which I reposted, of course, which was the quote is a gay character shows up in a movie. The super right wingers are like, they're shoving, why do they have to shove it down our throats? And then the picture is of two guys with pamphlets outside the door. The reason that they chose trans people is they understand that there is still some level of discomfort that a lot of people who don't have trans people in their lives feel about it. Right.
And so it was a great wedge for them, to just demonize trans people. And that's what they've been doing. And they've been creating, it's like, there's so few trans athletes. There's so few. And so few that they have a hard time making statistical studies to see if trans women have any kind of athletic advantage at all. Right. And all the studies so far, again, it's amazing that they could even find enough trans athletes to do a study
get a sampling.
On this. But they show that the statistical advantage is negligible. I mean, the statistical variance in cis women by themselves in any particular age cohort is way bigger than the statistical variance between trans women and cis women. So any race you have with a bunch of women is going to have variance,
right?
But unless we leave trans athletes in sports, I don't know how right-wing influencers are going to get launched without trans people to get angry at.
Right. Well, so they're going to have to come up with something.
I know they're going to have to come up with something else. So I worry about them. I worry about their livelihoods.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're kind of on the same page as me, that you keep an eye on how much joy it's stealing from you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
That's what's really important.
Because
you've got a great marriage, a great family, and a great life.
Yes. And I've been so lucky, and I try to, like I said, I try to think long-term and what's going to help long-term. Yeah. So I try to fund those organizations. I try to get involved. I try to, do what I can.
Yeah.
In things that build things as opposed to just screaming in outrage all the time.
Exactly. And that's a great modus operandi as far as I'm concerned. You just said, I've been really lucky. How much of your success do you attribute to luck versus the bobbing and weaving and the dedication and the single-mindedness?
Well, it's a tough call. I remember there was the whole nepotism, the whole Nepo baby discussion for a while because somebody had called Ben Stiller a Nepo baby because his parents were both revered actors and comedians in New York City. And he, of course, understandably bristled at being called a Nepo baby because the man works incredibly hard.
Unbelievable.
And he and I actually started at very similar times, and both my parents were in the business as well.
I really like Ben a lot. I know him a little bit, and I really like him a lot.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, yeah, he's great. He's always been lovely to me.
Yeah.
But I did grow up. Like the first time I saw Ben Stiller on a stage was in House of Blue Leaves at Lincoln Center, and it was 100% apparent that he was a star. It was one of those things. Everybody was great in that. Julie Haggerty was in that show. It was an amazing show.
Was it just he had a charisma that was...
He was hilarious. He was howlingly funny.
Yeah.
He made this huge choice with his character. And it was just convulsive laughter that everybody's had. And it was one of those things that you didn't walk away from that saying, this guy, well, his parents got him an in, and he 100% earned it. But both he and I were around that. We did have something of an infrastructure of like me going for an audition at that age was me seeing, like, people would say, "Oh, I know your dad," and just didn't mean I would get it,
right?
But it meant I was a little more at ease. So I did have some advantages.
You were, I think the word maybe is you were kind of welcomed a little bit more.
Yes, and that's a big deal. Yeah. That's not nothing.
Yeah.
I did have a leg up.
Yeah.
That being said, it's all about because the reason that I ended up getting the parts eventually, besides that I looked like Matthew Broderick, which I really did at the time, was because I was a theater nerd from the time I was 12 and was doing plays and doing musicals and sucking and just being terrible. But I was screwing things up and learning what I was good at.
That's the way to do it.
And I had ways to fail. I had built-in ways to fail that were safe. So that by the time I was really putting it on and starting to audition for things, I had a little bit of confidence. I had some skills, and then, but also I benefited from that little bubble of popular teen movies in the 80s, and those were mostly white kids,
right?
So that had a little bit to do with it, that I happened to be a white kid, in the right age range. That's what the studios were making at that time. So you can't even put a percentage on it. You have to be prepared for the luck. You have to. I'm telling you this. In the music industry, which is the only thing even more.
Thank you.
That is to even more of a degree, where it's about being ready for when that stroke of luck.
Well, I love the
happens.
phrase "success is where opportunity and preparation collide."
Yeah,
I think that's true.
It absolutely is.
So I asked you that particularly, not just because that's the word you referenced, luck, but because I think about it all the time too. Because I know so many people who were as dedicated and prepared as you were in the acting world, or as I have been in the music world, who just didn't. Yeah, they didn't find
there wasn't
their
the bubble of demand. There wasn't it was they had a style.
It's an intangible thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
There's no way to put your finger on it.
Yeah. One of the things that fascinated me. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
But that fascinated me about that I didn't know. Like from the pop music that I became accustomed to from what you were producing, I didn't realize that R&B was like the thing you grew up loving.
Yeah.
I like and of course it makes sense to me now. I listen to music, I go, oh, of course.
Yeah.
But that you were that you had that as part of your bones.
Yeah.
By the time you got your shot.
Yeah.
Made that you could do the pop, but it had that thing in the background that was great.
And thank you. It wasn't even like an intentioned thing, because maybe similarly for you in terms of your influences, I'm sure that those do creep in, but it's not necessarily an intentional thing. And it happened that the music that I've made for the most part is not considered R&B. But you're alluding to, and I hope that people do kind of go, oh wait, I kind of get it now. I get how there's. But it was just, that's the music that spoke to me as a listener. It's not necessarily that I knew I couldn't sing like Maurice White from Earth, Wind & Fire or Marvin Gaye or any of those, my heroes, Donny Hathaway, Sam Cooke. I can't sing like that. But that's just the music that moved me. That's the music that I couldn't get enough of. Earth, Wind & Fire, number one. So I would imagine that you had influences or heroes who your style is completely like you. There's no trace of them in your performances, but they were just the people who you just went like this.
Yeah.
Right. And there is an influence. It's just maybe it's not as visible or.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like who was your Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Probably Carol Burnett. Probably.
Oh wow.
Loved Carol Burnett growing up, and loved Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
Loved Jimmy Stewart.
I can actually see.
But see,
a
that's
little
that.
bit
Yeah, like Jack Lemmon, I get in the Lemon-esque era.
Did you ever work with him?
Lemony. I'm sorry.
Did you ever work with him?
Never worked with him.
Did
No,
you meet
never
him?
met him. I met Gene Kelly, but no, I never met Jack Lemmon.
Carol Burnett?
Carol Burnett, yes. I was friends with her daughter actually for a while.
Oh,
Carrie passed away.
right, of course.
And at one point, she was going out to dinner and she said, "Oh, my mom's coming," and I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
And you hadn't met her yet.
I had not met her yet, and we had just the best time because there's some people you meet and they're not who their characters are, and that's fine. We're entertainers. We put forth, we have personas. But she was like 100% who I had hoped she would be.
Isn't that the best?
It's great. It's just
this is
great.
the theme of not just this show that I do, but my conversations with people who are in the business. I'm always fascinated to hear if they've met any of their real heroes and was it a good experience. And 99% of the time it's that it was great.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I've had I haven't had those things where you go, oh, wow, there was a bag. Right. I can't. No, I've had people that were quirky, but fun. Like Harry Dean Stanton, who was in Pretty in Pink, and
wasn't he an acting teacher as well?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't. As a teacher, I
don't know that he was
so laid back. He would be the most laid back.
Maybe he wasn't.
But he's just got that incredible beaten cowboy sort of alcoholic. Thing going.
That cool alcoholic thing.
And yeah, he was lovely. He was always smoking pot in his trailer.
Yeah.
And, very, very laid back when we shot. Sometimes we got close to the lines. Sometimes we didn't,
Yeah.
It was just that's his process.
But your trajectory, and some of this I think I just knew through osmosis because I was so aware of you from the time my career started. It's weird that we didn't.
It's weird because it was so. My 86 was kind of when
my album came out in 87.
87, yeah, never met.
But the trajectory of your, like you said, your preparation, all the theater you did, all the mistakes you made, your opportunity to suck.
Yeah.
Right? To learn from being, although, you never know. It's all subjective. Mm-hmm. I was really interested, though, to see, it was No Small Affair was really the first major film you were in, right?
Yes. Okay. I had done one before with Bob Altman, but it didn't get released.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, crazy story. Robert Altman, director of MASH and Nashville and all this, one of the greats, Shortcuts, Gosford Park. I mean, amazing. He was given the opportunity to direct a teen comedy because this was the 80s. This was the time of teen comedies. And it was based on...
When you think of John Hughes...
When you think of John
Hughes... think of
Bob Altman.
Robert Altman.
But Bob Altman, MASH was a wildly successful comedy.
Yes.
He can absolutely do comedy. But his aesthetic was very not 80s. The 80s was not the time that loved Bob Altman.
Right.
And O.C. and Stiggs was this series of articles from the National Lampoon written about these two sort of juvenile delinquent kids who are just rebelling against the suburbia around them. And it was very snide, very snarky, just, it had a very dark edge to it. And for whatever reason, Bob got a deal to do it. It was like, I'll do my MASH for teenagers, And it was crazy because I learned the first day the way that Bob Altman worked, which was not like any film that I've done before or since. Actually, that was my first movie, so there was no before, which was what he would mic up all of the characters in a given scene, set up the cameras with a little bit of distance so he could get in everybody, have a basic idea of where the scene began and ended, and then he would just let everybody make it up.
Oh, wow.
And like, that's how Nashville happened, and that's how MASH happened. And, that's crazy. That's a crazy way to make movies.
And there wasn't a lot of rehearsal, or just like
no.
Wow.
No, it was a lot.
I guess that would have defeated the purpose.
Yeah, it was a lot of around
stream of consciousness.
Getting people together that you wouldn't necessarily get together. And for me, I was like, oh wow, this is how they make movies. This is fun and easy, and I
can make up my own lines.
Exactly, this is great. But unfortunately, the studio felt differently, and they weren't willing to wait for a MASH to coalesce. So they recut it and put it out. Or I don't even know if they put it out. I think they could never.
Who else was in it?
Jane Curtin played my mom. Paul Dooley played my dad.
Oh, Paul Dooley.
Ray Walston was in it. Melvin Van Peebles was in it.
Come on.
Yeah. Who else was in it? Dennis Hopper. Hopper was in it. Yes. Yeah. And it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And it was so much. Oh, Tina Louise from Gilligan's Island was in it. Who was I have a lot of empathy for female actors because the business is so awful to them. Yeah. But she used to have to be. They used to have a special golf cart just for her and a little parasol because the sun was not allowed to touch her skin. There was under no circumstances can the sun touch Tina Louise's skin.
Was that her edict or the studio?
I think it was her edict. Yeah. That being said, she was always incredibly kind and nice to me. But that was a little bit of the old school. It's like, oh, okay, I can see. Yeah. The sort of the days of the old school starlet are still around to some degree. But sadly, that movie never came out. It's one of those things that you can find on Amazon, but most people don't even know Bob Altman made it.
Right.
And that was my first movie. That was my introduction to things. And then I did No Small Affair.
Right. Which I need to pick that up, but I can't I'm sitting here just now thinking, I'm going to go for it. Okay. Because there is a really strange coincidence.
Okay.
Robert Altman also directed a film that came and went. No one saw it. I found it terribly boring. And it turned out that the only reason I became aware of it, even in retrospect, was in 1994, 95. I moved from LA back to my hometown of Chicago to raise my kids. And I found a house out in the suburbs on Lake Michigan that was this old Armour hot dog family estate.
Okay.
In a little town called Lake Bluff. And it's a large property and it was a large house, but it was like the perfect scenario for me. I could build a recording studio. It kind of ticked all the boxes. But an old 1920s house designed by a renowned Midwest architect named David Adler. And the house just has this amazing character to it. I come to find out that a film was done all inside my house.
Oh.
In 1980 called A Wedding, starring Carol Burnett.
Yes.
Boom!
Boom! It all comes together now. It all makes sense.
I think we might as well just wrap it up.
Yes, let's go home.
Because we can't beat that.
I'm going to drink this in the car on the way home.
I'll make you a to-go cup.
That movie, a friend of my mom's was in that movie, actually. That was one of the things. See, I was tangentially, I was around the business in ways.
And you would have been like 14 or something.
Yeah. But that movie was a little bit of a success. I recall some good critical notices for it.
But it was all shot in my house.
Oh gosh.
And it was fun. So when my kids were old enough, we put it on one night and it would be like my son Jesse was like, "That's my room." So, but what I found really interesting, and I've never asked you about this, from No Small Affair, which you're a supporting player in.
No, I was a star.
You were a star.
Yes.
Okay. I had actually never seen that movie.
That's not you're not
which
alone.
Is why I'm ill prepared. But I was fascinated to see that from No Small Affair to Pretty in Pink was that fast. Mm-hmm. Seemingly. Like a year, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel like, from a craft standpoint, you had a movie under your belt? Well, you actually had two movies under your belt, one that didn't come out. Mm-hmm. But do you feel like that prepared you for the holy John Cryer's a superstar?
Yes, in a way. First and foremost, it did. I was able to make some mistakes. I was able to see, see what I did in the Bob Altman movie and say, okay, no, that's, there's some things worked in that, some things didn't, and we were improvising, so we were failing most of the time.
Right.
And then No Small Affair was sort of a stab at a May-December romance thing with me and Demi Moore, and that was a great learning experience. I worked with Vilmos Zsigmond, who's one of the all-time great cinematographers. Jerry Schatzberg was the director who did Panic in Needle Park, and and so that was a big learning experience. But I don't know that I would have been, if I'd been cast in Pretty in Pink first, it would not have been as good. Ducky would not have been nearly who he was. I needed that the confidence I got from the first two.
Do you think you got Pretty in Pink from No Small Affair?
No, I don't think.
Or they were separate.
They were separate. They were mostly Pretty in Pink was a very singular thing. I mean, I literally got it because I went in the room with Molly and they just said, "Oh, this is the perfect dynamic." She was a little remote, which was exactly what they wanted. They wanted and I was always improvising jokes with her that were sometimes falling flat, and they wanted that.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that,
or at least she was making you think that they were falling flat.
Yeah. And again, the thing about Molly that's remarkable is she, everything is internal. Everything is really small. I mean, I would do scenes with her and I'd be like, when is she going to start? And then you'd see the movie and you go, oh, it's all in there.
Wow.
It's just in there, and that's remarkable. A lot of there's a lot of wonderful performers that have that, where it's just the stuff is happening down so deep that they don't have to. It doesn't have to come out.
So when Pretty in Pink, because the success of that and I think it's pretty well documented, the making of but I'm curious about the impact it had on you.
Oh.
Not so much your career, but on you, because you would have been, that was 80?
It was 86, so I would have been 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, so now I can drink.
When I was 21. Oh, yeah. So, okay, talk to me.
So that, and you're right, there was a little bit of a step up thing, because I had a huge disappointment. My first movie didn't come out at all.
Right.
Then my second movie, I was a star of, but it tanked.
Right.
I remember going to some of the theaters the night that it came out, just to see if people were showing up. And, there was, there were some. I remember there was one scene where I'm shirtless, where I take off my shirt, and somebody in the back yelled, "Where's the beef?" Which is a reference that a lot of people don't get anymore. But it was a very famous commercial at the time.
Where's the beef? It was implying that you were a little too thin.
It was implying that I was thin and that I was not particularly muscular, which is true.
Yeah.
But seeing myself on screen and hearing howls of derision from the audience was also a reset for me. But what it made Pretty in Pink was I was much more prepared psychologically. I was much more level-headed by the time Pretty in Pink happened. I mean, it exploded. It was a huge hit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not doubting what you're saying, but you're talking about sitting in a theater and having people yell out, and you use the word derision, and then you become everybody's favorite guy. Like everybody loved you. I wonder. I can relate to it in a way when my first video came out and my second video came out, and then I was off to the races. And literally on a Wednesday, I went through a mall and nobody who knew who I was. And then Thursday, girls are following me through the mall, right?
And when it's a switch that just flips, it's yeah.
But that's what happened to you.
Yeah. But see, I had little steps up. I had, so that helped a little bit. It wasn't just completely in the darkness and then, let there be light. So I had a little preparation. Also, I got to see how Molly dealt with it in California while we were shooting. And we'd go out to clubs and stuff. Because
that was after St. Elmo's Fire.
That was after Breakfast Club.
Right.
For Molly.
That's what I meant. Breakfast Club. Yes.
St. Elmo's Fire happened after Pretty in Pink,
Yes.
actually. And I did audition for St. Elmo's Fire. I'm fine with it.
Did you? For what role?
For Andrew McCarthy's role.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. And I'm fine. That's absolutely fine.
I'm going to circle
great.
back to, because I have a question for you, but I'll circle back to it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, but at any rate, so I got to observe Molly sort of dealing with it, who was fairly graceful about it, but she was remote, and that sort of frostiness protected her because people were a little intimidated by her. I thought, that's not me. I'm not capable.
That was her
of
bodyguard.
being frosty.
That was her invisible bodyguard.
Exactly, exactly. And good for her that she had it. I mean, she was 16 when she blew up.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
come on. That's, again,
Were
she's
you
got an amazing head on her
instantly
shoulders.
in public? Were you kind of accessible? Or did you like the instant fame? Did it scare you?
Oh, I liked it. I loved the superpowers you get. Because my sister used to go to clubs a lot when I was when she was a teenager, and I was 2 years younger than her. And I would go to the clubs, and invariably she'd get into the clubs, and they'd be like, "You stay out of here." And all of a sudden, I was getting into the clubs.
Right.
And I remember picking up a girl at a club. That had never crossed my mind that was possible. She was a baccarat dealer from Atlantic City.
Sounds like a contestant on the dating game.
Yeah. She talked really slowly. And I thought, she's beautiful and she seems very nice. That's not going to drive me crazy. And it drove me insane.
By the end of the night, probably.
Yes. So we were not long it was one night. But I discovered, oh my gosh, there's this weird fame superpower that you have for a while. And I tried to not be a dick about it. I grew up in the theater with my parents, and they had times in their career where my mother was a composer and a playwright, and there was a while where she was in a hit off-Broadway show, and so I'd see how she dealt with people, with fans who came up to her, and she was always grateful and graceful, and and genuinely grateful that they found connection in the work she did. And that's the thing I'm still grateful for, that, I make this stuff and nobody has to watch it.
Right.
If they choose to watch it and have a good time, or even if they have an okay time, thank you for engaging with what I'm doing. I really, really appreciate it, because it's not, it's a luxury. We don't, it's not
100%.
owed to me.
100%. You were in New York when you became a star?
Yes. I lived in New York.
Good place to be a young superstar, right?
It was fun. It was really fun. As I said, the clubs were fun. The bars were fun. I was never much of a Lothario. I wanted to be, but I always admired because I had friends who weren't famous who got over like crazy, and I just didn't have the mental equipment to do it. I would kind of date somebody long term,
You wanted to be you're a relationship guy.
I'm a relationship guy.
I get it.
But at the same time, I loved Hollywood growing up. I loved all the movies. So I always wanted to be, and I wanted to make science fiction movies and make, but the things I was getting offered were, more teen movies. And, but I got offered Superman 4, which was fun.
Very departure.
Yes, a big departure, fun. The movie is a fiasco. It's a famous fiasco. Yeah. It's the movie that ended the franchise.
But I remember you in it.
Oh well, thank you. It was. But I loved being just allowed to be a part of that. I loved the stuff that was goofy, and like I remember that time when I met Gene Kelly was at a dinner honoring Gene Kelly and Janet Jackson for some reason. It was a fundraiser. It was a charity. I know, a strange combo, but okay. Because they were showing Janet Jackson dancing, and she's, a terrific dancer. But then they show Gene Kelly dancing, and he's Gene Kelly. And it's like, there's no, he can't do what she does, and she can't do what he does, and that's fine. That's as it should be. But I was sitting at this dinner, at this table, And this woman struck up a conversation with me from across the table, and she was an older woman, but still really beautiful. And we got to talking. We were giggling about stuff, and I couldn't tell if she was with anybody there, and I couldn't tell. I was like, "Are we flirting?" Because she's like 60 or something. I was like, "Okay, I'm 21. Okay, why not? You know,
I'm gonna go with it for a minute.
This is fun." And at the end of it, I said, "This has been weird. I'm sorry. We've been across this big round table this whole time. I'm sorry. I haven't introduced myself. I'm John Cryer." And she said, "Oh, I'm Shirley Temple."
Oh my God!
I was like, "I'm sorry. What?"
That Shirley Temple.
That Shirley Temple.
Wow.
Okay, sure.
Wow.
But we did not hook up.
I was going to say, so how was Shirley Temple?
It was just
in bed?
it was just a fun evening. We just
fascinated.
Wow. But
that's a crazy story.
But I loved being around that. A lot of us who were in the Brat Pack.
You were Brat Pack adjacent.
I was Brat Pack adjacent. A lot of us sort of enjoyed that there was still that old Hollywood thing around.
There's very few people I talk to anymore at all, let alone our age even, or certainly not younger, who are fascinated with that era. Like I am too, like completely fascinated. Not only with the music, obviously, like I'm completely a freak for Sinatra and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. But also the Hollywood, the acting, the film world. There was an elegance, or a seeming elegance. It seemed elegant. Mm-hmm. Probably wasn't. It was probably just debauchery. But
well, yeah. I mean,
elegant debauchery.
Yes, and there's all these stories that float around about just profanity and horrifying biological details and behavior, and because they were people, they were a bunch of actors. We're idiots, but it was. But the aesthetic of the time was so glamorous, and what the studios were building, what they were selling was so glamorous.
Yeah.
That you couldn't even. It's like there was somebody was shooting a movie for MGM, and there was a scene where they had to be in a poverty-stricken home, and there was smudges all around the light switch, and the head of the studio was like, "We don't have smudges around the light switch in an MGM movie," and because it was a product that was being sold, and the 60s blew up that whole idea.
Right. And I guess that needed to happen.
Yeah.
But I was, even when I was a little kid, and I got it from my grandmother. So my maternal grandmother was this amazing woman. She was really a sort of a third parent. Because both my parents worked. And when I was very little, when I came home from school, my grandmother was installed to be there to have somebody at the house for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. And we were very close, and she was a wonderful grandma. But the best thing was that she loved old movies. And she introduced me to that whole era. So we would sit and watch Gary Cooper movies together, and we would watch Bogart movies together. And I started collecting what I called movie books, the films of James Cagney, the films of, Clark Gable. And I became so fascinated with that in a way that you would have thought I would have pursued acting. Mm-hmm. But there was never the slightest flicker of, I want to do that.
Just a fascination with...
Just completely... Maybe similarly, like, did you ever...
Oh, I have that with pop music. I love pop music. Never.
And you have musical talent, but you didn't go, I need to do that.
Yeah, no.
It's interesting. How we just our brains sort of choose it, right?
Yeah. And that was one of the things where I was so thrilled that you reached out to me, was because how people make pop music is just amazing and fascinating. It's like magic to me. So I watch it, and I hear your stories, and I just love that stuff. Total sucker for it. But it's the art that's meaningful to me, that is a part of me, but that I can't make,
Right.
So.
Right. You casually referenced it was the Judd Nelson role, right? That.
No, it was the Andrew McCarthy role.
Andrew
the
McCarthy
one that I was auditioning for. Yeah.
In St. Elmo's Fire.
Yeah.
No, in Breakfast Club.
Oh, and did I mention it in Breakfast Club? Breakfast Club.
What did you go up for that you didn't get?
St. Elmo's.
St. Elmo's.
Yes. Breakfast Club came
I wrote
out.
a song in St. Elmo's Fire.
You did?
So I was in it and you weren't.
It all comes to a circle. I knew you were going
to say.
lord that over me, Marx.
No, I'm curious.
I've got a drink in him and he's suddenly just crushing me emotionally.
Oh, by the way, segue. I made these drinks, as I always do, hands-on here at Stories to Tell. I asked John yesterday, what's your cocktail of choice? And he said an old fashioned. And I'd never made one before. I enjoy them. I'm not a mixed drink guy. Mm-hmm. I just do straight vodka or straight tequila. But I've had a couple of these in my life and they're delicious. So you said you like it.
Yes.
You said it's a good old fashioned.
Yes, it's terrific old
But
fashioned.
we have to give a little shout out to the whiskey that I used in this old fashioned, which is called Bear Fight.
Yes.
And it's a company co-owned by a fellow actor, your fellow actor, Gabriel Macht.
Yes.
From Suits fame.
Thank you, Gabriel
who's a
Macht
lovely
of
guy
Suits
and
fame.
sent me the most beautiful, now I'll show you the bottle later. Yeah, show the box. Show the box.
Show him the box.
You
Come
take
on.
the stuff off of there.
Let's
have a moment here. Because it's not every day people send me a nice gift.
No, it is lovely.
And look at this. It's great packaging.
It is an excellent whiskey.
It's
I'm
really
not
good.
paid for this. This is not a paid placement.
No, we're just being bros.
Drinking and saying, this is good.
Yeah.
This is good alcohol.
We're being bros to Gabriel.
I'm enjoying this alcohol.
Yeah. You like it? So the question I have for you based upon let's do it again. The question I have about St. Elmo's Fire is whether it was when you found out you didn't get the part or even more importantly, after the movie became so successful, is there a movie or is that it, the one that stung the most, the one that got away, that stung the most?
No, it is not. And it did not actually sting that much. Part of, because I had just done No Small Affair with Demi Moore, who even then I said, okay, she's a star. She's you cannot help. She just got incredible charisma.
Yeah.
Yes, we dated. I know you were going to ask about that. Zero regrets. She actually.
I know you dated because I read your book.
There you go.
Your book is great.
Thank you so much. We traded memoirs.
Yes,
it's funny
we did.
Because how Chico and Harpo trade salamis whenever they meet each other. We just trade our memoirs.
We traded salamis too.
Yeah.
Euphemism.
Whoa, hey, whoa. There's anything wrong with
Lady.
But no, Demi, in her book, in her memoir, which is also excellent, by the way, said that she felt badly because she took my virginity and she felt like she didn't have, it wasn't as meaningful a relationship for her as it was for me, which is a very sweet sentiment. But I had to go on social media and say, technically, you didn't actually take my virginity. I had actually had sex before, but I can see why, given my level of skill at the time, she felt that this was my first time. Absolutely. That I can totally understand why that would be her take on the experience. But no, she was lovely. We were both very young people, and being young.
Yeah,
exactly. But she had and she's been very open about this. She had started to have a drug problem before she did No Small Affair, she had started off No Small Affair in very good shape, but then had a hard time with the movie towards the end.
And did that affect you in your performance?
That affected me a little bit. We had to reshoot some stuff, But when I auditioned for St. Elmo's, they put me in a very weird position because they asked me, hey, you just did a movie with Demi. We love her for this other part. How was that experience? And I had to be honest with them. And I said, she's going through something right now. She's wonderful. When you turn on the camera, you'll get what you need. But she's going through something right now. And they cast her. And in doing that movie, the producers were so, they basically laid down the law and said, you got to get sober to make this movie. And that was the thing that changed her life.
Wow.
Which is,
and you came this close to taking that away from her.
And I came this close to sending her off into a spiral of sadness.
I think next time you tell that story, you have to read.
I have to.
I would just, we can work on it together. If you want.
Yes, you're right. We're going to workshop it a little.
There were a couple of lines I would leave out.
Yes.
The whole, like, I told the producers, she's going through something.
I didn't say don't cast her. I said I gave them the truth, which is she's going through something. If I hadn't said that, they wouldn't have said it to her.
Whatever you need to tell yourself.
She owes me all her success.
This is what happens when you drink during the day.
Yes. Thank you, Bear Fight.
Yes, thanks, Gabriel.
But what was the point?
The point was you said it was not like the one that got away.
St. Elmo's. St. Elmo's is very meaningful for people. I didn't read that script and go, "Oh, this is my youth." It just didn't. It didn't resonate with me that way. No, I have a fun story of the one that got away. I think I might have said this in the book, so you might recognize it at one point. I got a script to this indie movie that my agent said, read it on the plane because you're heading back to New York. You've got an audition for this tomorrow morning. You've got it's Saturday. You got to read this on the plane, and Sunday you'll be doing an audition because that's the only day they can have auditions. So I was like, what? Yeah. Who has auditions on a Sunday morning?
Right.
That's crazy. So I got on the plane, I started reading the script, and it was all over the place. It was like, it went backwards and forwards in time. There was these big monologues that were like deeply profane. And like, I was like, what is this? And I couldn't get through the whole thing on the flight. I'm actually a very slow reader of scripts anyway. So I got into New York. But I didn't have any time to really prepare. And as I said, these were big monologues and they were, and it was like, this is a lot. And I wanted, if I'm going to do audition, I want to be good at it. There's no point in going in half. So the next morning comes and I'm dreading this because I was like, I had not had enough time to prepare. I didn't finish the whole script. There's parts of this that I don't understand.
You certainly couldn't have understood your character.
So I was, it was all, I was all feeling a little in over my head. And I got this call from my sister and she said, my mother-in-law is sick. Can you watch my daughter for me for a while this morning while I go out to Long Island to see her? And I was like, oh, great. I now have an excuse. I'm a good uncle.
Because you didn't want to.
Because I don't want to do the audition.
Gotcha.
But I'm a good uncle. So I call up the producers and they're so nice. They're saying, listen, this is the only day we're going to be in New York. Please, will you come in today? We're so excited about seeing you. And I said, I'm so excited about auditioning for this. But I'm sorry, I'm a good uncle. My niece needs me at this moment.
You're a family guy.
And they said, bring your niece. I said,
wow.
This script is just deeply profane. You want her to, like, my 2-year-old niece to sit on my lap while I'm spewing this bile? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? And he said, please. And I said, I'm so sorry. I cannot, thank you so much for being so excited about seeing me. I was really figuring that at some point they'd be back in LA or I'd be back in LA and I could meet them again. So I hang up and I never hear about the thing again until there's a headline in Hollywood Reporter of this Sundance movie that is setting the world on fire. It's Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, I knew it was going to be Reservoir Dogs. And now I do remember it from your book.
Yes.
But I got holy.
And all of a sudden I was like.
At first I thought, is it True Romance?
No, but I realized that had I had my 2-year-old niece on my lap as I gave those deeply profane monologues, I would have totally gotten that part.
Nailed it.
But that being said, Steve Buscemi ended up playing the role that I was supposed to audition for, and he's great in the movie.
Which is good. Doesn't it make it better?
That does.
That instead of like seeing the movie and going, oh, this guy sucked.
Yes, exactly. No, it's much better when they're great because you go, oh, okay, that is what's meant to be is meant to be. It was launching. He took off to the stratosphere after that, and deservedly so.
Yes, and he's a fine actor, as they say.
Yes,
that's almost an answer to my actual question, but it's not quite.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay,
because you didn't want it.
Yes, that's true.
So I can see how it was the one that got away. Totally. Much like I have one which is similar, and then I'm going to make you.
There's a musical metaphor for
There's
that?
a musical metaphor.
Oh, I'm so curious.
So I'm friendly with a guy for many, many years who used to be at a record company in Nashville, and he was the head of their promotion department, radio promotion. So he got songs played mostly all country. And I was, at that time, I was in Nashville a lot, writing and producing for all these different country artists. And because I have an affinity for that, and I've had a lot of success in that market as well as a writer and producer. And I became friendly with this guy. And he then, after a couple of years, he was doing really well, and he decided he wanted to start his own label. So he started up this indie label out of Nashville with major distribution, but still his label. And he signed this young girl act. And I'm in Nashville years ago. We go to dinner just because we were friendly. And he said, oh, come back to the office. First of all, I want to show you the offices. And this is at 10 o'clock at night. So he turns on all the lights, and it's a beautiful office. And he's taking me through, and he goes, and also I have an ulterior motive to bring you here. I've signed this girl. She's my first signing. And I really want you to write with her. She writes. So I want you to write with her because I'm putting her with some co-writers. And I was like, how old is he? How old is she? And he said, she's 16. And I was like, already I'm like,
oh God, yeah.
What am I going to write with a 16-year-old girl? You know what I mean? And then he plays me a couple of the demos that she's done. And they were okay. They weren't bad, but they weren't like, I didn't hear it and go, oh my God, I have to.
Yeah.
It was Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that's the music.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah, you never.
And I actually said, listen, man, like, I wish you the best of luck with her. But
good luck with her.
I don't feel, and in retrospect, I do hate that I was short-sighted about whether she became Taylor Swift that we all know and love or not. I thought I didn't really want to write from a standpoint of trying to get in the mind of a 16-year-old girl or facilitate whatever. I was very short-sighted in that because what I could have done was thought, oh, I'm going to just try to coax out of her what she wants to say, and I'll try to be the guy who comes up with the catchiest melodies she's ever had. Turns out she didn't need me at all. But I do look at that and I just go, wow, talk about a train that I missed. A ticket to a train I should have jumped on. You know? Yeah.
Have you ever run into her socially at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Once. I'm playing a gigs in Nashville. This is years later. She's a superstar. And I get a text. I'm in my dressing room about to go on stage in Nashville from this guy who I didn't really know, but through some other people, he had my number. And he said, hey, Richard, I'm so-and-so, and I'm Taylor Swift's road manager, and she's here. She would just love to, she's coming, she's wanted to watch, but she'd love to say hi to you. And she had no idea, by the way, that I had been happened. That much of a idiot. And so she came up, and she was so lovely and complimentary, and I said, I can't believe you're here in this, like seeing, she goes, no, I've always loved your music. And I was like, well, congratulations on everything. And I was this close. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to. There's no way for me to convey this story in 45 seconds without me looking like the idiot that I am.
But isn't it nice to know that your art had some appreciation, that like I love that there are young performers that I meet every now and then that are, amazing, and that will say, oh, I saw that thing you did way back when, and that, I loved it, and that's gotta feel nice.
Amazing. Yeah. So now back to the question that you didn't answer.
That I didn't answer. I'm avoiding it.
Tell me a movie. I'm sure that there has to be one, if not several movies that you campaigned for, that you were like, even when you were really successful and you were like, I'll come in and I'll read for you and I'm going to inhabit this character, and you really wanted it and you didn't get it and it really pissed you off.
There haven't been any. I've been lucky in that I haven't had the Tom Selleck thing. Tom Selleck supposedly turned down Indiana Jones. I haven't had that. I haven't had I would have loved to have done. I did audition for Back to the Future, and that video is floating around, which is fun. And I would have loved that. I did. I enjoyed that script.
That's a great answer.
An enormous amount. And I would have, I would still kill to work with Spielberg on something.
Yeah.
I've loved so many things.
Is he your bucket list?
Yeah, he's my 100%.
Is there 100%. Any director more than him?
More than him? No, not more than him. There's young directors that I love now. Like I love Alex Garland. I love there's a lot of much more recent people that I love. But that would be just,
that's a good answer though.
Yeah. No, and I realize that his
and you
movies
screen
have
tested for it, so you.
Yes, I did. I'm trying to think. I also screen tested for Gremlins. Did not get it. What else did I screen test for that was
of note?
Of note. Oh gosh.
Like
I said, I've been lucky in that I haven't had those things that I turned down that became huge. Most of the things that I agonized over turning down just didn't end up being huge hits or anything. Right. But have them. I mean, obviously, I auditioned for Friends, did not get it. But that's just I auditioned for something that I didn't get. I did love that script. It was obviously wonderful from its first iteration.
Chandler.
For Chandler, yes, yeah. I was in London doing a play at the time, which sounds very fancy.
It is fancy.
Yes, it was very fancy. So I auditioned for their British casting director, and then the tape got stuck in customs, and they didn't see it until they'd already cast Matthew Perry.
Oh,
But
wow.
No, but that being said, though, I had a friend who was in the casting department, a guy named Marx, who I went to, who was one of my counselors at my summer camp. Wow. And he said they were going after him for a while, and we weren't in the mix.
Oh, that's got to make you feel a little bit better.
Yes.
Maybe?
Oh, absolutely makes me feel
because if it had really been like, you never know kind of thing, which you still really don't ever know.
But I loved that show as it was. I loved Matthew Perry.
There you go.
I thought he was flipping genius on that show. I don't think I would have liked it as much if I was in it. So,
it's really interesting. And
I don't love my work. There's a few things that I've seen that I go, oh, that one I really nailed.
Really?
But not very many. Not very many.
Do you look at it? Do you watch?
I used to watch 2.5 Men just as like quality control, just to see if I was starting to go off into, if I was hitting comedic beats too hard, if I was starting to get sloppy. Oh my God,
dude, really?
Yeah. I would occasionally do that.
Well, maybe instead of saying really, maybe I should go, oh, that makes sense. Why you would be so consistent in that role. Because I'm not saying this because we're friendly and because you're here. You were so great in that show.
Oh, thank you.
Every time, every episode, you delivered what we all wanted you to deliver. So maybe it was that. Maybe you kept making sure you're doing it right.
Well, it was that and great writing. You just can't get around. They just kept coming up with great, fun stuff for me to do. So it was, that's alchemy. You never know when you're going to hit the right group of people that just gets the gear that you can hit.
Yeah.
But also I learned a lot about myself. I loved doing stunts. I loved, I loved that I hate doing one-sided phone conversations, but they asked me to do it all the time.
Right.
I learned that it's hilarious when I'm naked. That was a hard lesson. But
where's the beef?
Where's the beef? Exactly. It never stops being funny.
Did you find that similarly to your theater, then into the Altman movie that didn't come out, then to No Small Affair, and then being all of those moves making you sort of ready for Pretty in Pink? Mm-hmm. I also know from reading your book that there was a slew of either failed pilots, almost like in the George Clooney score, where he had so many.
He is the shining light for so many actors. Are like, Clooney did like 18 pilots that tanked.
And you had a similar run of that. Do you look at those things that, quotes, failed or just didn't become hits, leading you into walking into 2.5 Men and being like, I got this?
100%. Yeah. Because those were all multicam sitcoms They were all really well written. I did the show called Partners with the writers from Friends.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it was really well written. Trouble with Normal I did that was really fun and really interesting. I that absolutely teed me up for success. I didn't I felt really comfortable in front of an audience. I knew how to work that. The hard thing about multicam sitcoms is hitting the level where you're big enough that it feels that it feels like you're there comedically for the audience, but you're small enough that on camera it doesn't look like you're just hamming it up.
Yeah.
And that's a very tough thing to do.
Is it harder for a seasoned stage performer?
No, being a stage performer, it's easier.
Gotcha.
That helped me tremendously. And it's funny because at the time, I took all those shows getting canceled. I did a show called The Famous Teddy Z. That was devastating to me because it was considered like the new hit show, and it died in half a season. You know, it was like it was on the cover of TV Guide. You know, and I took that so personally. And in retrospect, I really loved those shows. They all had great things about them. And, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they didn't take off with the public. Can
we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Because there's another bridge that we have. And I think this might be informative to people who really have no idea how your business works or how my business works. Whether it's an album or whether it's a single, to have a hit song or a hit album is really hard.
Yes, and it's so rare.
It's very
that's why
rare.
Somebody like you who has, like 10 top tens, understand.
I rang the bell a few
the
times.
lightning that strikes
Yes.
to get you in the top 10 once. One endless summer night.
Yes. Yes. That's absolutely true.
Is astonishing. The amount of talent and the stars arranging, and you happen to get it has the right vibe at the moment,
exactly
and it's the thing that people want at that time. They want somebody with a fantastic mane of hair, and that's going to be Richard Marx.
Or they don't, and that
don't.
prevents it.
Yes.
The amount of factors
that
go into even getting it to the point where the public can make it its own decision.
Yeah.
Is people don't understand the science project that it is. And it's very similar to television and film, right?
Yeah.
Where
the amount of things that have to go right is astonishing. The level of success is just this infinitesimally small sliver of things. And that's why the people that do it over and over again are just worshipped in the industry.
Yeah.
Because everybody understands it's a tiny sliver of chance that will get you there.
Yeah.
Interestingly, two of the producers on my show were Wick Grousbeck, who owns the Celtics. I did a show for CBS for NBC rather, called Extended Family, about the owner of the Boston Celtics. Mm-hmm. And we went through, making the pilot, getting on the air, all these things, and it took this incredibly long, arduous, there was a strike that shut us down for and at every step of the way, I kept telling Wick, saying, understand, this never happens.
Right.
That we're getting this, that this is actually going to pilot is astonishing because nothing ever breaks through and nobody ever goes to pilot. And then we got an order for more episodes. I said, understand, this is just the next level. They'll order more episodes, we'll make more, and then we won't get on the air. Understand that because
you've seen this movie before.
Yes, there is no, the chance that we will get on the air is tiny.
Yeah.
And then once we get on the air, who knows? And that's exactly, we kept jumping through those crazy hoops. And finally we hit the wall where we just weren't, they just weren't making the ratings to keep the show on the air,
But there's this whole other layer that we haven't even mentioned, which is creatively you can tick every box.
Yeah.
You can have the best quality product ever. Mm-hmm. And it can be as simple as a distribution malfunction.
Yes.
It could be that there's a strike.
Yes.
On that week when so you didn't get the film reels didn't get to these theaters in time back in the day of that, right?
Yes, sure.
Or in my case, or in film too, but like especially in my case, who else has records out that week?
Yes. Yes, that's another thing, because it's like your pick. Everybody has choices, and this is the week they went, oh, that Richard Marx guy.
There are hundreds, if not more, dots to connect to ring the bell.
Yes, exactly.
And I, while I appreciate you saying, pointing out that I've had multiple examples of that, as have you, it also sort of begs the question. It also, not begs the question, it proves my point, which is, okay, you and I are two examples of people who chose a career that is dependent upon acceptance.
Yes, it needs an audience.
As an audience. The audience has to accept us.
Yes.
Or else we don't have a career.
Yes.
Right? And we've both been fortunate enough to have experienced mass acceptance, but not all the time.
No.
Isn't that fascinating?
It is fascinating.
Because if the public loves you, why do they then sometimes not love you?
Yeah. And it's especially ephemeral for musicians, because style and pop music is so crazy and
changing with the times.
And you're still the songwriter you've always been.
Yes.
David Bowie was the same songwriter he was when he started, but he was in a completely, Black Star. I mean, it's like, that's a different world.
Yeah. And not, had his death not coincided with it, I don't know that it would have had any acceptance or success.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? It's and where the culture is to accept it. It's like my mom's a composer and she's 89, still writing music, still and she actually wrote a show about trying to being an artist in your 70s. She obviously wrote it a little while ago, but it's like, how come people, why do people decide that the thing that you have to offer as an artist isn't relevant at that moment?
Yeah.
And of course we don't know, and we never know what will work and what won't. I think it's especially interesting for musicians because it's such an exploration. It's always an exploration. Did you think like you have a style. You have a style from the 80s and the 90s of your music, because it's beautifully produced. It's slick. It's pianos. It's synths. It's
layered.
Down. You got a nice twangy guitar. And, I remember you love me. Yes, I'm going to do.
Yeah, he did. He did.
I'm going to do impressions of Richard. Let's go through your.
No, that's not.
Let's go through your Richard Marx essentials.
But yes,
playlist.
I had a vibe.
But you had a style. But that's, I'm sure, not all that you were like Hazard is different.
Wow,
that's like a story
song titles.
But no, that's like a story song.
Totally.
And some of your songs are
different.
And so my point is, as an artist, you have different things you want to say.
Yes, of course. And just like when you do different roles and different parts, and when you play somebody evil versus like the happy-go-lucky, that I even understand more. Like I can understand the public who has grown to love you, for example, as a character, like your role in 2.5 Men, which just was so successful and everybody loved you and that character. For a fan like me, I want to then see you do all kinds of other shit. But a lot of the public, they just want you to be
Alan.
that. They want Alan. Don't just be Alan, man.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I was Alan.
Mm-hmm.
I've been Alan.
I did Alan for 12
Yeah, I'm
seasons.
done with Alan.
That's
like,
a lot
I got
of
other
Alan.
shit.
I mean, he was cheap. I get it. Yes. Alan was cheap.
But
he was kind of spineless. I get that. Yep. I kind of did spineless. I
get all of that. I get all of that. What is fascinating to me, and I guess maybe the best way I can illustrate it is actually not with music as much as I think you'll totally relate to this. So I'm on tour, this is years ago, like during the heyday, like in the early 90s, and I'm playing these massive places, and I'm on this long tour in America, and I'm playing arenas, and at this point, I'm 3 albums or 4 albums in, and I've now relaxed a little bit. The first couple tours, I was posing, and I was like, I had no performing experience. I was a studio guy before this, and I was learning as I went, and I was not very relaxed with myself.
Did you have a performer that you wanted to be like?
Several.
Oh, okay.
Rod Stewart.
Sure.
You know, Michael Hutchence.
Okay. Gosh, yeah, those are different.
I was like, I know. So I would be trying to, not the music, but the stage vibe. I would look at them and I go, I'm not that, but I want to be that. So I would try to do my version of that. And in the case of Rod, I actually started on one tour. I started to dress a little bit more like I was going through his colorful suits phase, and I was kind of doing that, and I was like stole a move or two. But what was happening that was unique to me, I think, was I started being funny in between songs. I started just being a goofball and telling stories quickly because I'm not a comedian. But I wanted it to be more than just the music and me pouting and Zoolandering, right? I wanted to be charming. I wanted people to go, he was funny too. He sang his ass off, but he was funny. That's what I wanted. And so I came up with a couple of stories that were actually true, that had happened, or something would happen during a show spontaneously and it would get a great laugh and I'd go, I'm going to put that in tomorrow night. That's what we do. So, and you'll totally appreciate this. I'm at a point where I'm packing arenas, so the acceptance is mass, and I'm having hit after hit. And I tell this, it's not a joke, I can't even remember exactly what it was, a story. And every night in the same spot, the entire arena cracks up laughing and they cheer it. This happens 12 cities, 13 cities. I'm in Detroit. That moment happens. I deliver it exactly the way I've delivered it 14 times.
Nothing.
Crickets. And I go, now a smart man would have just carried on. Not me. I went, no. I said, Bob, I'm like, oh, no. People work with me. Like, no. And they're looking at me like, dude, that wasn't funny. That to me is an indicator of what I'm talking about. Where we have no idea. The metrics can change that fast. It was that particular 17,000 people didn't find it funny.
Yep.
None of them. The night before, all 17,000 thought it was a hilarious story.
Yes.
The next night, nope.
No. Yeah, you just
Humbling.
never know. I mean, that it does. My very first work was in comedies on Broadway. Was in Torch Song Trilogy,
right?
On Broadway, and then Brighton Beach Memoirs, and that is that because some nights you would get on a roll and the audience is floored and they're just, and then some nights you just, that train never left the station, and you'll get little laughs here and there and they'll be enjoying it, but there is no, it's intangible, what is the thing that made it click in that way. And I have no, also Detroit is messed up. I mean, it's a messed up town.
Let's blame Detroit.
Let's just blame Detroit.
That particular crowd.
Problems.
Hey, before we go too much further, I really want you to talk to me about The Man Who Calculated Death. This podcast. You've jumped into the podcast arena.
Left in, I've dove in.
Dived in. I've divin in.
No, I love podcasts. I'm podcast nut.
But is this your first experience with producing one?
No, I actually produced one called Lawyers, Guns, and Money that was about the Iran-Contra scandal, which is great fun if you listen to it, because the reality of those stories, this was Iran-Contra was this crazy thing where the president of the United States was secretly waging a war in Central America to defeat the communists, but it was all illegal. But what's funny is they had to use
some great characters in those,
some crazy people to do this because it was all illegal. Then they had to use drug runners and mercenaries and people pretending to be drug runners and mercenaries. And so it's an absolutely hilarious, awful true story. So I made that show called Lawyers, Guns, and Money. And then this new thing, The Man Who Calculated Death, just totally fell in my lap. It's an absolutely insane story. here in Los Angeles, the CBS affiliate, there was an anchor woman named Suzanne Rico. Lovely lady, beautiful blonde lady. She and my wife were very good friends because they were both on the CBS morning show.
Your wife, Lisa.
And yes, Lisa Joyner, my wife. And so we were over at a dinner party at Suzanne's house one day. And she knew I was a huge fan of the space program. And I love the history of it. I had just been to Moscow to do cosmonaut training for a documentary. Really? Yeah. Yeah, it was, by the way, I'm not a good cosmonaut.
Oh, turns out.
Just yet another career path shut down.
Hey, you had to try.
Me. I had to try. And it was amazing. I'm glad I tried it. But I would not be a good astronaut. But at any rate.
You're no Katy Perry, I'll tell you that.
I'm no Katy. I have something to shoot for, Katie. God bless her. But at any rate, so we got to talking one night at Suzanne's house. And Suzanne kind of casually, she said, "Oh yeah, I heard you're into the space program." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, my grandfather worked on the space program." I was like, "Oh, that's amazing." And she said, "Yeah, before that, he worked for Hitler." But anyway,
you're like, what? Sorry, what?
Back that up,
Suzanne. You mean Adolf?
Adolf, yes, that one.
No, Lou Hitler.
No,
he had
Lou
a delicatessen.
Different guy, yes. So it turns out she had been on this kind of alternatively amazing but awful journey where she had grown up knowing her grandfather was a genius inventor and that he had worked on the space program here in America. What she did not know was before he worked on the space program here in America, he invented the V-1, the first cruise missile for Adolf Hitler, which terrorized London. So he was one of Hitler's most important scientists. She did not know that. And so she had, her mother had recently passed away, and on her deathbed, her mother had said, I wrote a memoir, but I can't finish it. Can you finish it for me? So Suzanne, who'd always sort of had shadowy ideas about what her family's history was, now was forced to confront all of it because all of it was kept secret. A lot of it was buried when the United States smuggled those scientists over to help our space program. So she flew to Germany with her sister and did all these amazing interviews. And she was sort of consumed by the fact that her grandmother, the wife of Robert Lesser, the inventor, had been killed mysteriously at the end of the war, and that had traumatized her mother terribly. And
they had never
solved it. They were in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere that was bombed out of nothing around it. It was individually targeted for bombing for some reason. So Suzanne took it upon herself to solve the mystery that had bedeviled her mother all those years. And she told us she was doing this and that she had interviewed all these people. And my wife, who's a producer at heart, said, "Do you have audio?" and Suzanne did. She had enormous amounts of audio. And my wife said, "You should make this into a podcast because this is an amazing story." So Suzanne, went back to Germany, as I said, with her sister, and ended up through military historians and family interviews. She solved the mystery. She solved the murder of her grandmother. And also had to confront her family's history under Nazi Germany and exactly how complicit were they. And it's an amazing story. And it's also an amazing story because it's how this family survives their country falling to authoritarianism.
It's timely.
It's unfortunately very timely. And there's so many, like just the other day, it came out that the Trump administration is trying to induce women to become mothers. And one of the ideas, they're trying to get the birth rate up, at least among white women, is to give them medals. Well, this is the Mutterkreuz was the medal that Hitler gave to women who had enough Aryan babies. It's a really... it's hearing how smart, in no way racist, this family that had not a trace of that, how they fell into serving this incredibly evil regime is just astonishing.
And it's episodic.
It's episodic. It's 9 episodes. It's called The Man Who Calculated Death. Suzanne just won an award for it, which is very exciting.
Oh, nice.
The Gracie Awards, which are
because it just came out like a couple months ago, right?
Yeah. So
what is so you just got it?
So I produced it. I produced it with Suzanne and my wife as well. Basically, she just had this enormous. She had hundreds of hours of tape, and it was basically shaping the story.
The audio is really. I listened a little bit today.
The audio is astonishing.
The audio is really cool.
She just was, when her mother was diagnosed with cancer, she started just recording everything her mother said, and then she started recording everything her aunts said who were alive, who were 11 years old when the Nazis took over. So she has just this incredible archive of audio of what it was like to live through that from the German side, and it's been one of those things that I've been doing a sitcom and I've been doing other things, but this has been something that I've come back to, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my career, because I think Suzanne has made something really amazing and beautiful.
Yeah, and it's also just so meaningful.
Yeah,
and that's something you can look back on and that exists, that to those who need to hear those stories, and we all do, That's good for you.
We need to be reminded, and amazingly, in the course of it, she met a Holocaust survivor who actually built her grandfather's bomb. Wow. And they have since become friends. They have since they give talks together, and it's just he's an astonishing human.
Late
Oscar
80s,
90s, yeah. and still in thankfully remarkable health.
Cognitively sound.
Heartbreaking, awful story of what he went through, but it really, it's an amazing friendship that she has struck with this man, and she is such a different person than she was when she started this. But again, knowing the truth of what your family.
It's really brave, though.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that would be like, I'm not opening up that camera.
Who wants to open that up?
Especially if the hint of it is like, kudos to her, but also, congratulations. That's like a really meaningful. What do we call it? A piece of art? I believe it is.
I think she's done an amazing, brave thing. And the thing about podcasts that I love is it's incredibly intimate. I mean, you hear these things, and it communicates it in an incredibly visceral way. I mean, these are the voices of the actual people it happened to. There's we have some file stuff. We have Walter Cronkite occasionally, but it's all really firsthand accounts from these people.
Yeah.
So I think she's made something really beautiful and valuable, and that's why I'm sort of running around trying to promote it.
Yeah, happy to help with that. I have a gift for you, but I have one more question for you before we wrap up, and I give you a gift.
Okay. Gift. I want gift. Give me a gift.
I hope you love the gift. I think you'll like it. I think you'll like it. My question is, I see occasionally when I'm scrolling sound bites. Now we're down to like Instagram stories and especially YouTube shorts because our attention span has all dwindled to nothing.
To nothing, yes.
And one thing that I've noticed, I see with a handful of actors, Cillian Murphy being one recently. I saw an old clip of Jim Carrey talking about this. The concept of inhabiting a character as an actor for a prolonged period of time, whether it's just a film that takes months or a series, in your case, from like I know seasons doesn't mean years. How many years were you Alan on 2.5 Men?
I was 12 years. Yeah, it's 12 years, 12 seasons.
You played that character.
Yeah.
How many characters would you say you've played in your entire career?
Probably like 90.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
So my question, and I've never asked an actor friend of mine, is, has there ever been a character who when you realized that the job was coming to an end, you were like, I'm going to really miss playing this person? Or do you just go, it was a gig? It's a gig and I'm ready for the next one.
I loved playing Lex Luthor for years. It was, it was an Arrowverse show. It was a CW, none of those shows took themselves super duper seriously. Right. But man, it was fun. Man, it was for me as a comic book nerd and for, and as an actor, having fun in a gear that I never got to use before.
And to have done it when you were younger,
yes,
in film, and then do it, so cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. And when that was over, I thought, oh, I'm going to miss this. And also, it's a role that so many actors that I've loved have also played and done amazing work with. And like Nick Holt is going to do the next Superman movie as Lex Luthor, and I can't wait to see what he does with this. But just to feel like I was one of them is really fun.
Do you have a favorite Lex Luthor other than you?
It's tough because Michael Rosenbaum on Smallville was great. And they wrote that character, that the narrative of that character is amazing. And so I believe that is like the best on-screen
and John
portrayal.
Glover.
And yes,
who played
as his dad,
what's Lex's dad's name?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's an L.
This is killing me. They're all L's. They're all L's. This is killing me. Leroy, no.
Lonnie.
Lucius.
Whoever.
Whatever.
Lex Luthor's dad, played by John Glover.
Yes, John Glover was
phenomenal
was
too.
Wonderful on Smallville.
So, okay.
So it's slightly... But obviously Hackman, because I was 14 when I saw Hackman, and I the thing I loved about Hackman was he had hair through the whole movie until the end when he ripped it off, and then he was like, "Oh, he looks exactly like Lex Luthor at the end."
Exactly.
You saved it for the end, Gene Hackman, mostly because you just didn't want to cut your hair.
It was just vanity.
Yes, it was just vanity. So it's a tough choice, but I feel like what Michael Rosenbaum did was really amazing and just really inhabited it.
This has been a delight.
Thank you. The pleasure has been mine.
So every episode, I give a gift of vinyl.
Oh, okay.
To my guests. Sometimes.
Is it Richard Marx' greatest hits?
Can you imagine? Yeah, that's always my stuff. Sometimes I go through, so in this garage over here, I have amassed a tremendous vinyl collection. A lot of it is my father's old records that he passed on to me. Mm-hmm. And I collected records my whole life. But I did a little deep dive. I didn't want to ask you. I was tempted to kind of text you and say, hey, in this world, blah, blah, blah. But then I did my homework and I was looking up your history of interviews and discussions, and I was trying to find something about music, and I found something. And I know you were a huge Radiohead fan.
Huge Radiohead.
So I did not get you a Radiohead because I figure you probably already have it. So then I was like thinking about because I love Radiohead, but I wasn't the devotee that you are. Mm. But adjacent, who's a band that I really love that I wonder if you have or don't have. And I got you this Depeche Mode album.
Oh,
and I have it.
Thank you. I do not. But I have recently been in a rediscovery of Depeche Mode phase. Boom! We seriously just made a playlist of post-punk, a lot of goth. Yeah. Which is not necessarily Depeche Mode, but thank you so much. I'm so excited about this.
And what triggered it
has a vinyl.
Okay, great. She has a record player. Let me see I'm spacing on the name. The other day I was flipping the dial in the car, and Leave in Silence came on.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this is so good. This is so good.
Yeah.
And so it made me go. I didn't have it in my library on my phone. Mm-hmm. And then I went, I'm going to get the vinyl.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So it's a brand new sealed copy.
Okay.
That I hope you enjoy.
You. An interesting thing I love about Depeche Mode is they start with Vince Clarke in the band. Mm-hmm. And, just can't get enough. And it's just oh my God, and then he leaves and then they keep being great.
Yeah.
And then he goes and does 3 great things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you, man. That's so kind of you.
Dude, I'm so happy that we finally caught up with each other decades later.
Me too.
And I wish you a very happy rest of your 2025.
Thank you.
And dinner with our wives, hopefully soon.
Yes.
And happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. One thing I noticed that I just did want to comment on is when I listened to your interview with Terry Dubrow, you complimented how handsome he was probably 17 times. and yet nothing about me during the course of this. I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm no Terry Dubrow. I'm not.
I think if we watch the tape, if we look at the tape, I think what you'll see is me returning handsome compliments to Terry Dubrow because that's our dynamic. He wants me to tell him he's handsome, so he says that I'm handsome. And if you'd really watched it, you could have thought to yourself, I'm going to throw a couple of, hey, Richard, you're so handsome.
You look so great.
You look so good. Then it would have been like, then you would have been.
If I get the thing.
Yeah. So
but see, I didn't give any out. I didn't.
You get what you give.
Yeah. Well, you look okay.
You first of all. Very few. My best friend, who's a musician named Matt Scannell from the band Vertical Horizon.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Okay.
He is one of those people. Yes. He is one of those guys who not only pulls off the bald head, but like you, is more handsome, I would argue, than with hair.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I had no choice with this. This was my hairs were. No.
Believe me, if this starts to go, that's not the choice I'm making.
That's fair.
I'm just saying.
That's fair. No, that's fair. Absolutely. Well, such a pleasure, man. Such a pleasure.
Same here, buddy.
Thank you. And thank you for this.